Got it. All right. Welcome everyone at the next multi-networking community sync. Today is March 6th, and we don't have much of an agenda. We had a question from Peter. If anyone else has some, oh, I didn't press enter. Oh, of course I didn't, because everyone in the meeting. Okay, now you got it. If you want to add some other topic, let me know and we can pick it up. But for now, Peter kind of brought up a question on how the KEP references a real infrastructure network. Is that correct, Peter? Did I got it right? How would you do that, right? Peter, you muted if you're there?
Sorry, the question for me, Mase?
Yeah. I just want to make sure that I got your initial question right? Is that correct, right? Your question, you're asking of how would I, with this KEP, how would I reference a real life, I don't know, a VLAN on my on-prem, or let's say a VPC on a cloud infrastructure, right? Is that correct? Is that the question?
Right, sorry, the issue. That's why a little bit as a hearing you fragment. Sorry.
So should I? So basically, are you asking to how this KEP references to a real life network? Is that true, or a VPC in the cloud?
For example, creating an additional network. So there is a default network, and I would like to create an additional network for any other application. And the network should, this application should be connected, for example, the network green. It can be an on-prem infrastructure or can be anywhere else. In on-prem case, there will be different fabric vendors. So this is more likely somehow there is then an annotation field or some parameter is needed to make able to build this linkage. But for example, in a public cloud case, there are different cloud network VPCs, subnets.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand you.
This
So
multi-network can be a Bluetooth or any better. Yeah.
Right. So if you were to look at the, let me maybe go to that readable link, share that for a second. So let me just get to the right moment. I think here, share this stuff for a second. So the way we plan, and the current KEP, what it assumes is, it is just a reference of abstract inside the Kubernetes as a base, right? So here, for example, you have a very simple example of that, where if you think about it, it always boils down to the implementation. And you called out Multus, but there can be others. And maybe there can be an implementation that would directly just use the names of the this object, right? And do something about just that. So to answer, just direct answer to your question would be, it's up to the implementation on how that's going to be achieved. We are introducing this parameters reference in the object, where a implementation can provide their whatever they need, parameters to satisfy the implementation itself. And I was referring to, unless the implementation can be very straightforward and doesn't need any parameterization, and it can get away with just the name of the object without any additional parameters, right? So and then they can map somehow, or you just log somehow the names of the object to whatever is in the infrastructure, and that's how the implementation then matches the things. But again, as the short answer is, it's up to the implementation on how that it's done. And as you said yourself, right, on premise, I might have different fabrics, right? And then basically it's up to the implementation and the owner of the fabric, or some special networking situation that you have in the on-premise world, on how the things map, right? Because we don't want to push something that was pushed back on the KEP. where network, now we are trying to make network as a kind of infra element, which it is just a handle for that. That's what's kind of we want to make sure this is. We give some level of control to the implementers on to state that a network can be ready or not. And that's the kind of the gist of that, right? We just provide you, okay, you can make the network not ready or not, and only that's the only things you can say, right? But it's up to the implementation on how, whether they want to leverage that or not, and how they what's the situation around that, right? And it can be super complex, super tied together, or it can be very vague, very high level, very abstract. And it's up to the, again, implementation on how, what level of kind of coupling with the real life network this has. It's up to, will be up to implementation. I think someone was speaking,
Okay.
I cut. Did that answer your question, Peter? If you're speaking, we cannot hear you. I think you have some network connectivity issues or something. I think that's hopefully that is clear to kind of how we want to position. Then it's up to, again, up to implementation on what is the level of coupling between the real life network and the infrastructure and this object, right? Anyone else has some question around this one or wants to add something? All right. As I mentioned, I don't have much of an other items on the agenda. Anyone else has some questions on this? So on my kind of backlog, I'm trying to kind of put I'm hopefully gonna manage to do that this week, to put the use cases that we wrote in a more readable fashion, and basically I will probably just create this another doc where I write those down and share with in the Slack channel so that we can all review. My goal is to ensure that folks going for the EU KubeCon have a better like wording around this one, and everyone can chip in on how to kind of word the use cases the best. And then so that the folks that are going to represent, and I'm looking at you, Doug, and I think Nathan, you mentioned you might be going as well. So folks that going to the EU KubeCon to kind of make our case. And I think this is where we at this moment, where we need to ensure that multi-networking has viable use cases to stand on its own. That's what we're trying to achieve, and ensure that kind of DRA, we are not overshadowed by DRA, because we know that DRA has some capabilities for this, and there are some similarities on level of configuration, but yeah, we need to ensure that if we will go with DRA, then if anything, then let's maybe then let's slightly inject our ideas into the DRA so that it can support our use cases and the way we see this happening. Any other questions? Any other topics to add? If not, then let's call this. I don't want to hold you just to hold you, so let's give everyone 45 minutes back. Thanks for joining. I will make sure that if there is no other topics next week, I will just cancel next week.
So my Per, I finally joined, but you saw my note there on. I really think the telco use case could be renamed to say that it's a sort of network.
Okay.
It's an application that uses network functionality, right? It's nothing really telco about the needs to be able to, I mean, to have VRFs and so on. So I wrote something about it on the multi-network list last year.
I think I think we kind of pointed out why you would want to have multi-network, and this is basically this item, right? Ensure that we don't exhaust the control plane interface with our data plane traffic. I think that's the main reason.
What I say is like you have two types of applications. You have applications that are what I call network unaware. They just use what's there. And if an application falls in that category, great. And then there are applications that actually are network applications that will use network resources. That can be that they use a VRF, that they connect to, they do the bind to specific address, that sort of they're using network resources as part of what they are. If I'm building a router, I mean, I will obviously then provide networks and sort of route between networks. And that's why I say telco. So I would say that we have network unaware and network aware applications. And what the use case we're talking about called telco, it's actually network aware. Layer 2 to layer 4, I would say network aware applications that then can use network resources and implement network resources.
Okay.
So that's if you didn't read, you can. I mean, it's there. I think I wrote it on, was it Friday or something like that?
No, but again, I think that's what we are trying, and how at least how I am seeing this. The VRF usage inside the pod, it's up to your application and how you want to do that. I don't think this should be part of this cap, definitely, right?
I agree with you there. I'm just saying that if you categorize applications, I think you can categorize them in two very simple categories: network unaware and network aware. A network unaware application will sort of just use in reality the default L3 master, basically the default routing table, and that's all it will use. It has no clue if it's just one interface or two interfaces or 14 interfaces in there, right? It will just, I mean, if it's Go, dial,
sure,
and the routing table will handle it. If you set it up correctly, no problems. If you do it incorrectly, well, problems. But that's sort of what it will do, and hopefully you can do multi-network for network unaware applications. If it's, like I said, you just use a standard routing table and you set up routes, or you have directly like connected subnets, right? That is trivial, then you don't have routing internally there, and you live with that, and then that is just fine.
No, that's fine. But what is the to the point? What is the use case that you would say we would want to present here and describe? Because VRF is just okay. I want to have VRF in my application. That's not something that the platform should worry about, right?
What I'm saying is this: if you are a network aware application, then sort of it depends really what application wants to do, and sort of using VRFs as setting up network it's not really the application. But if you have a networking problem that requires you to use VRFs, then the application or actually the containers in the pod, they can be unaware or aware mixed, needs to be network aware. An application that's
fine. But Per, again, what is the platform use case that you would want to cover here? Because that's I still don't see the point what you're trying to make here. We already identified that we generalized it a bit, right? Telecom, and one of the use cases to ensure we separate the two interfaces because of congestions. Whether they are aware of networking.
This has nothing to do. This has nothing to do with performance, because I can, like you said, with a network unaware, I can make simple networking in there so that call it the heavy traffic going that to a disk array or something, use a different network. The application can be completely network unaware. This environment, sort of the environment around there, is set up in such a way.
No, that's perfect. But again, please, what is the use case that you want to present? This is what I'm missing, right? Are you saying that we should have that I want to support network unaware applications with multi-networking? And what is the?
I'm saying that you should sort of that support network unaware. They're unaware, right? But if you have an application, that's why I'm saying that. If you have applications that are layer 2 to layer 4 network applications, they then are network aware and will, depending on application, use things like VRFs and so on. And what I'm saying is that what you call the telco use case, as it has nothing really to do with telco. It's if they are layer 2 to layer 4 network applications. And
maybe that's true, but then we cannot general. We have to provide. We want to generalize, but then as well provide a use case that we are network savvy here in this room, but you have to sell this to folks that are not. They are aware of, okay, we have some telecom, 5G, they will be aware of some of those things, right? But not everyone is savvy about around that, like NFs and how they deal with and how we can do. So you have to create a real life, use case that basically folks would understand, right? And I don't want to generalize here. Like, or you can, I want to deploy a network aware or unaware application. That's okay. What is the application? What is the real use case? Why you need it like that, not the other way, right? That's the question we need to answer here.
So I mean, Doug wrote last week, overlapping IPs. That's typical in any, I would say, it's very much used in most.
Yeah, I think we have that, right? We have that in private,
exactly. But
cloud
if you're going to handle that, you need to be network aware. If you have an application,
but that's really implementation detail now, Per. That's what I'm trying to say. Let's not.
That's what I'm telling you. An application that's going to work with overloading IPs needs to be network aware. Has nothing to do with implementation. It has to be network aware.
How that changes the platform? Let me. How that changes the platform?
That you need to. I mean, so if you separate it, and this makes it simpler. You have what the application needs to do, and you have what the platform needs to do. Already today in CNI, I mean, with multis and so on, I can set up VRFs. I can add routes into VRFs. That's there. There are even CNIs. I mean, CNI plugins for that. So. So if you look at the platform, yes, the platform then needs to be able to handle that. You can tie a interface to a VRF. That's all the platform have to do. How this is used, this application, the platform has nothing to do with which routing table that an application use. That's the choice of the application. And if it's a network unaware, it's trivial. It uses the default, call it default VRF of the pod's network namespace, because that's what the typical fib lookup does, right? That's where it goes. If you want to use
something then on the level of this cap that we're trying to position this, right? Keep in mind that there's that aspect as well. I don't think we want to kind of provide a solution, but because that's what you're trying to say, that you can have VRF with, so that will be your solution. But
I'm not saying
we want to avoid it. I think before we go for the Neha, you have hand, please go ahead.
Thanks, Maciej. I just wanted to add, since we were talking about use case, and I don't know if that use case has already been discussed, there's also a use case where there are hobo services platforms which want to deploy an application, and that application needs a private access to their own network. So that's a classic case of network isolation inspection.
Absolutely. And then
I think this is what we have here. I think this.
Okay, got it.
Now read through that. Does that fit, right? Is that something that would answer that use case? Because if it's a repetition of one of those that we already have,
that I agree with. That probably, in my terms, requires that application to be network aware.
Correct.
Sure, that's fine.
Then we are covered.
Yeah, I think this is because existing network. Separation of corporate versus external. This is what someone was bringing this up last week, and I think that was you, Doug, right? So exactly, we have this, right?
And then what I found out when looking that in Go, and I still do that, to do both the dial connected to a different routing table and also have a resolver that goes to different resolver using another VRF is really simple to do, which is good things. So where I used to be very skeptic to have network aware Go applications, I'm now seeing it as trivial. So when classifying things, I think it becomes very simple to say you have network unaware, and they don't know if it's one or many networks, and then you can look at, okay, what typical.
No, but Per, give me network aware, unaware. Give me a real life use case for that. That's what I'm asking for you. Just generalizing to that level. I think
so something that is going to access a customer's networking.
Not something exact, Per. Please give me exact. Like that's what I'm trying to tell you, right? We're trying to like look at the use cases that we already provide, right? Be more concrete on I don't know whether that's like a specialized gateway or VPN implementation, cases, right?
You start to look at how they grew. Right? Do they cluster? And I'm telling you, the cluster you will get out of this is that you have applications that are network aware and you have applications that are network unaware, and that's fine. If you don't want to have that in there, fine. But that's what you're going to have.
No, but I don't see But that boils down to implementation of how you solve that, right?
No, it doesn't, because
how would we do that?
It does not, because if you need to access two different routing tables, you need to access two different routing tables, and the application that does that needs to do that. It's nothing that can do it for it. It will not happen by magic. You need to know that I want to use sort of the VRF's routing table to go to application A, to go to enterprise A. I'm going to use VRF when I go to enterprise A. I'm going to use VRF2 when I go to enterprise B. The application has to be completely aware of that. If you just string in some networks sort of to give you access to storage or something like this, that can be done completely invisible for the application. Application doesn't have to know. You create a network with a 100 gig network that goes to a certain subset of the address space, and the application will never see that. But if you want to be able to route into a specific application that has a specific set of addresses, and you don't want to sort of start putting in 100 routes to go there, you put the VRF and you use a default route in it. Application has to be completely aware of this, and that's how the networking is built. I mean, there's 30, 40 years of work put in how to do this, and it's simple to use. So why would someone try to do something complicated when there is a simple solution? And it's the only solution to use, because if there are two routing tables, well, you select the routing table. That's the first thing you do. And I'm just telling you that it's in Go, it's super simple to do.
No, that's again, that boils down to implementation. That is outside of the aspect. I'm still missing give me a real life use case. What will that be, right? I see Neha provided quite good. I think that's going to be a talk on the next KubeCon, right, Neha? I see with the storage and NetApp.
Yes. Yeah, we have a classic use case of NetApps, and Microsoft is actually going to present a case study for the similar use case.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? But that's what we need, Per. We cannot generalize. Oh, network aware, unaware. That's okay. That's nice statement. But now, give me a real life use case. Here it is, right? I want to connect. I want to have a private connection to my storage. That's a real life use case which someone can fully understand. Okay, I want to have a pod. It is network aware, but that's out of the point at this point. I don't think there is any point for the platform to know that this application is aware of the network or not. It's up to the implementation, right? And that's keep in mind, we are talking here from the platform point of view, not from the applications. So basically, we want to provide a use case where I have application that has to access a storage, but that storage has to be accessed through a private connection. It cannot be, and basically it has to have like namespace and kernel isolation, right? From the rest of the cluster, right? So that's that kind of use case that we're looking for. I wonder whether that storage use case, Neha, can we borrow it? Should we just add it here? or as a part of the on-premise? What do you think, Doug?
Sure, I think
just got back from AFK.
hello. Yeah, sure, we can add that scenario. Although our case study, we initially was trying to pivot towards a KEP, but that KEP has multiple iterations. So our CRDs, the way we have constructed, have digressed a little. But I'm all into like integrate it later and then take some feedback from us how we have implemented. We can take from how the KEP is shaping.
Right.
But
That's
clearly, we can totally add the use case here. That's a classic use case we as a platform team also is seeing.
right.
From
And
multiple
Doug,
partners.
I think it was slightly, I was asking you because I think on-premise is what you added, right? And this fits into that storage with private connection. Should we just create another one or slightly more?
I think so. Yeah, I don't know if it's on-prem only because it could be
Right.
very much in on the cloud as well. Like customers have their own private cloud, Azure or Google or in these platforms, and they are hosting their applications onto these onto the Hobo services. We call them Hobo, like which is hosted on behalf. Like NetApp is one of the classic scenario. But they want direct connectivity, private access to their storage accounts. They do not want to go over public IP.
But then, okay. Can I achieve this with, because now I'm going to poke holes. Can I achieve this with, is there a, because you said public access, that's fine, right? But why would I need multi-networking for that use case?
The multi-networking as in the application is not hosted in a customer's VPC or VNet. The application is still hosted by a Hobo service, by a hosting platform service here, NetApp in this case, into their own network. Now the application is running in their own network, owned by their VNet.
And I assume the Hobo service is shared by different, any tenant can access that, right? Or every tenant gets their own version of this?
So a Hobo service is running in their own tenant, and then they are interacting with applications, come to those services, hey, run my code, run my application, but give me this to my storage.
Well, even if you use tunnels, right, you can end up with a problem. Who can create interfaces inside the pod network namespace? If it's a KNI CNI that must set it up, well, then I would say it's a multi-networking problem. If you have a pod then that has the privileges that it can do it on its own, well, sort of
correct. It will be, in my opinion, it should be done. I mean, you would orchestrate it to platform, and platform is the one which is.
I tend to agree with you. We don't want to have pods that has too much rights.
Correct. So it's a CNI in the guest, and of course there will be some plumbing required on the host, like by the platform. So it's a platform which is doing it holistically.
And then you run into what we discussed before. Can this be done sort of with simple routes, or do you want to have a sort of a way to encompass sort of a larger address scope or an unknown address scope on the other side?
You would still need routes inside your pod network namespace because you would want to orchestrate.
It always needs to be routing, right? But I mean, if it's just one address that's there, then you sort of can put a very simple route in, right? It can be a /32 or a /128. But if it's really more like you try to implement a VPN, you have the customer's networks behind, and you might not even know all the addresses
that's
used
correct.
There,
So
right?
it's basically
and then you would use a VRF. And those are, I mean, I'll draw some pictures tomorrow and sort of add in that. I think I can help with that, because that will explain when you would use different network constructs, right?
No, that's correct. But our use case is simple enough that it is simple routes which will access customers' private private cloud, and that
and
that
then
could be
you
behind
just
on-prem.
hope that those addresses are not used by the platform that you're running on.
That's correct. That's correct. We do have that limitation, that overlapping.
Yeah. And then sort of if you want to safeguard yourself from that, again, you use a VRF, but then the application that uses this have to be aware.
Correct.
This, right?
I would say more than application, the platform which is hosting that application needs to be aware to be able to host an overlapping address.
Well, yeah, it
network.
depends on where the storage application will have to be aware, even if the end user application is not aware, right?
That depends who is plumbing the application, right? It's a hosted app service which is deploying the application. So it's on hosted service to be made to make sure
that running
that
as a separate container in the pod, or like a sidecar container, sort of, or
no, the whole pod application belongs to customer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments? Any other use cases someone can come up with? Because that's a new one that we had. That's good.
I mean, one part of me, it's like feel like, okay, I should throw in a the 5G use case, but it's so very in this case specific telco, and I don't know, it will probably just have the opposite effect.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning, right? We need to ensure the use case is more, we need to focus on more enterprise use cases rather than
that I agree, and that's why I said,
yeah,
that's why I said maybe what we call telco should be that is a network application, really, and that you do a network application, and that can be a gateway. If I would want to implement a VXLAN gateway on top of this, I would be network aware,
yeah,
and so on. But yeah, no, I think throwing in the network instances and 5G interfaces will just confuse everyone beyond where we want to go.
All right. Any other comments? We went a bit over than I thought, but we had a good discussion, I think.
I'll change the comment on me to say joined later.
All right, folks, then let's call it then. If there are no other
Did
topics.
Did you say you wanted to cancel next week, or what did you say?
I will if there won't be any, if anyone has no topics by end of day of Monday next week, then yeah, I will just call out and I will update everyone on the chat, on the Slack chat. All right, and I will update the notes as well for that. All right. Let's have it, and if something comes up, I will try to get the more descriptive versions of the use cases, so we definitely can go through that at least. All right, folks.
All right.
All right. Thank you all.
Stop recording. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.